Today we check in with the fat community over at Tik-Tok, a realm that we may call Thick-Tok. That's actually my producer Sean's joke. Now, as the host of the show, it's my God-given right to steal the joke without credit. I can steal any joke I hear around here because it's mine. That's the way it goes. But I've decided to forego that privilege and give credit where it's due in this case. So there it is, Tik-Tok. Anyway, we'll start with one recent viral video from a fat activist, and then perhaps we'll continue down the Tik-Tok rabbit hole and see what else we may find. Here it is.
I'm going to prove to you why white people are the reason I'm fat today. If white people didn't go looking for spices, then various sea routes to Indian subcontinent and Africa and other places of the world would not get discovered. And if they didn't get discovered, then East India Company would never come to Indian subcontinent. And if they didn't come, then the fertility of the land would not get destroyed because they forced us to cultivate tobacco and dyes and opioid, things like that. And that destroyed the fertility of my country. And then if that didn't happen, and if they didn't exploit and extract resources until my ancestors were left with nothing to eat, we wouldn't move to this grain-heavy, very little nutritious diet that we have today. Also, if white people didn't come to the Indian subcontinent, then my ancestors would not go through 50 small, medium, large famines in a period of 200 years. That's a lot. And in 1943, nearly 3 million people would not have died due to starvation and malnutrition. And if that didn't happen, then this entire place and the people of this place would not adapt to survive on lower calories.
Okay, I didn't realize that was a 45-minute clip. But it's a fun game, I have to admit. It's like the self-victimizing version of 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. Just take some negative aspect of yourself that you don't want to take responsibility for, and then find a way to cast the blame as far away from yourself as possible. I can do this too. You know, for instance, I tend to be impatient and at times ill-tempered, I admit. It's not my fault though. It can actually be traced directly back to Alexander the Great's invasion of Persia in 334 BC. I'll need to do some research on Wikipedia to connect all the dots, but I'm sure there's a way to do it. Actually, in this woman's case, you might compare it more to a sort of, it's sort of like a butterfly effect, but for fatness. So a butterfly flaps its wings 700 miles away, sets off a chain of causation that eventually ends with this girl eating a cheeseburger. Although here, in a rather extraordinary feat of deflection, she has punted responsibility actually out of this century, halfway across the previous millennium. Imagine the mental gymnastics required to be in the process of devouring like a Cinnabon while thinking to yourself, this is all Vasco da Gama's fault. Damn you, Vasco. Meanwhile, there is, as always, an obvious contradiction at work here. On the one hand, we're told that fat is beautiful, fat is good, fat is healthy, fat is desirable. On the other hand, it's also very important for us to believe that fat people are fat through no fault of their own. So it's like, this is good, but it's not my fault. Well, if it's beautiful and good, then why would you not want to take credit for it? In fact, if white people made this girl fat, then shouldn't she be thanking us, given that fat is beautiful? We made you beautiful. You're welcome. Which is it, is my question. You have to choose. Pick a lane. Either it's bad and it's not my fault, or it's good, in which case the blame game makes no sense. Let's watch the next one.
Fat shaming and skinny shaming are the same.
Actually, no, they're not. Fat people are denied jobs, proper medical care, health insurance, they're paid less, they don't have equal access to clothing, travel, many public spaces. Even the body mass index, the way that it discriminates against women, especially women of color, it was created for and based around white men. Like, fat phobia is literally rooted in anti-blackness. It's rooted in racism and sexism. Skinny shaming is not. How many times have you seen marketing campaigns that are labeled, "Get fat quick, finally add those stubborn 30 pounds"? Show me where all the weight gain industries are. Show me all the damaging messages that say that skinny equals unworthy life or skinny equals ugly. When is the last time that you've been penalized financially when an aircraft seat had to be accommodated to your smaller body? When is the last time you've walked into a doctor's office and after they weighed you, stopped listening to what you were actually there for and told you to just gain weight because it will fix everything? Fat people endure all of that and more. Skinny people do not face employment discrimination or medical discrimination. The world was designed for you. Eat a burger is just not comparable to systemic abuse and oppression.
I mean, she's absolutely right. You know, fat shaming and skinny shaming are not the same. Because if you're shaming somebody for being skinny, then you're shaming them for a healthy physique, provided that they aren't, rail thin. If you're shaming them for being fat, you're shaming them for being in an unhealthy and destructive physical state. You really shouldn't be walking up to people and shaming them for their appearance in either case, but it is without question worse to shame a good thing than it is to shame a bad thing. Does it make sense that the same company who controls half of online retail also passively eavesdrops on your private conversations at home? Big tech is more powerful than most countries are, and they profit by exploiting your personal data. It's time to put a layer of protection between your online activity and big tech, and that's why I use ExpressVPN. Think about how much of your life is on the internet. Sadly, every site you visit, video you watch, message you send gets tracked and data mined, but when you run ExpressVPN on your device, the software hides your IP address, something big tech can use to personally identify you. So ExpressVPN makes your activity harder to trace and harder to sell to advertisers, therefore. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your internet data to keep you safe from hackers and eavesdroppers that are on your network. What I like most about ExpressVPN is how easy it is to use. You can download the app on your phone or computer, tap one button, and that's it, you're protected. And ExpressVPN does all this without showing or slowing down your connection. That's why it's rated the #1 VPN service by TechRadar, The Verge, and countless others. So, stop handing all of your personal data over to the big tech monopoly who mines your activity and sells your information. Protect yourself with the VPN that I trust to keep me safe online. Visit expressvpn.com/WalshYT to get 3 extra months free. But my favorite part of this clip is her list of oppressions and persecutions that fat people face. She says fat people don't have equal access to clothing, which is an interesting way of putting it. So if I gorge myself during Thanksgiving and put on 5 pounds in one weekend, I can then complain that I don't have equal access to my own pants anymore. Yet, contrary to the way she phrases it, there is no law preventing fat people from wearing clothing. I mean, incidentally, this is actually news that someone should probably share with Lizzo. It's like, you're allowed to wear clothes, just so you know. By the way, the reason there aren't advertisements telling people how to add pounds. She says, why are there any there's no ads telling people to put on pounds. Well, the reason for that is that, number one, you don't want to add pounds, right? It's unhealthy, but also nobody needs help doing that. Putting on weight is easy and fun and often delicious. You just make a tray of brownies. That's all it takes. There's no further assistance required. So that's why you don't find that. Let's check out one more.
I'm gonna be real with y'all. I am really sick and tired of skinny coming on this app and trying to compare fat phobia to getting called a door once. That's called body shaming, and it literally happens to every single person on the planet at least once. It's not a systemic issue. Girl, I went to my doctor when I got diagnosed with severe depression, and she deadass looked at me and said, lose some weight and break up with your boyfriend. I was in school today thinking about where I wanted to go for off-campus lunch, and I started looking up restaurant menus and realized that I didn't want to linger on the tab too long in case somebody looked over at the fat girl's laptop, seeing where she wanted to go for lunch and judging me for it. I can't walk into a 7-Eleven and order a Slurpee and some Skittles because I'm afraid that when I put them down on the counter like a skinny person could do with no problem, somebody's gonna judge me for it. I've applied to a job at a restaurant and heard somebody say how they're not gonna hire me because they think I'm fat enough to eat all the food. I'm terrified to be seen eating in my car or eating alone. Y'all got insulted once and ran with it.
This is what the youth of today are spending their energy on. This is what they're arguing. These are the subjects they're discussing. What's worse, fat shaming or skinny shaming? Oh my God. Okay, let's go through a few things here. I would absolutely judge you if you were buying a Slurpee and Skittles at the same time. I mean, fat or skinny, if I see someone washing down Skittles with a Slurpee, yes, I'm going to make some judgments about that person. That's disgusting, and you would deserve to be judged for it. Absolutely. You deserve judgment. In fact, if someone walked up to you to your face and made fun of you for buying Slurpees and Skittles at the same time, you would deserve that too. It'd be good. It'd be a wake-up call for you. It's like an intervention. Guess what? You don't get to be free of the world's judgment. Here's a news flash for everybody watching right now. You don't get to be free of the world's judgment. You don't. Nobody does. You are being judged all the time. All the time. People look at us and observe our behavior and make judgments. That's just, sometimes the judgments are bad. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes they're neutral. This is just what it means to live in a society among other rational creatures. You can accept that and move on with your life, or you can sit around crying about, I'm being judged, I'm being judged. Yes, you are. Okay, we've established that. Live your life now. Or just stay huddled in a corner in a fetal position. Stop judging me. Well, you've chosen the latter, I suppose. And now you're on TikTok. Like, I can't even freebase pixie sticks behind the dumpster at 7-Eleven without being judged. Of course you can't. Nor should such behavior be free of judgment. Also, you most certainly were not turned down for a job at a restaurant because the interviewer said you'd eat all the food. Okay, that just didn't happen. It absolutely 100% did not happen. However, did a doctor actually tell you that the cure for depression is to break up with your loser boyfriend and shed a few pounds? I hope so, because that's actually fantastic advice. I wish more doctors would help their patients adjust their lifestyles before writing prescriptions. You had a good doctor who cared about your health, which is why I assume you never went back to him again. All in all, if these experiences, as you described them, actually all happened and were upsetting to you, there is a solution. It's a solution totally within your power. You can lose weight. It won't be easy, but you can do it. It is possible. I know from experience that there is a correlation between diet, lifestyle, and weight. We all know this from experience. This is the point that the fat activists, the fattivists, seem to always miss. You can't lie to the rest of us about this issue. You can't pretend that you have nothing to do with your own waistline. All of us have experienced putting on weight because we ate too much and didn't get enough exercise. All of us in the modern world have experienced that. We know that's how it works. We also know that it's difficult. It takes self-control to practice dietary discipline. And we know that's why you don't want to do it. Not because you're oppressed or the victim of white supremacy. It's hard, and you don't want to do something that's hard. We've all been there to one degree or another, which is why you would actually have our sympathy if you just said, I know I can get healthy, but it's really hard, and so I'm struggling. You could just say that. That's a statement I totally sympathize with, because whether it's weight or something else, we all have things about ourselves that we don't like or we want to improve. You know, but we have trouble improving those things because it's hard. It's hard to improve something about yourself. Doesn't matter what it is. And we all have flaws. And so if your flaw is that you tend to overeat and you don't get enough exercise and so you put on weight, that's a flaw. It is a flaw. You're not the only one in the world with flaws. We all have them. And you could rightly point out that we all have flaws. That's true. But when you make your flaw into a cause, right, into a banner that you march under, and you try to convince the world that your flaw is actually a virtue, well, now you've made it an issue we have to talk about. And that's on you. If you would just admit that it's a flaw that you do have control over, then it's an entirely different situation. You know, and for the rest of us with our flaws, we have them not because, we have trouble solving them, not because we can't solve them or it's impossible or because it's all the fault of spice traders in the 1500s. We can control ourselves, but it's difficult, and we have trouble doing difficult things. Everyone does. That's why we call them difficult. That's something that we can all, as humans, relate to and sympathize with, and we can commiserate with each other about that. We can also support each other and help each other. But you can't really have anyone's support or anyone's help or even sympathy if you refuse to be accountable for your own choices. As long as you insist on blaming everything and everyone but yourself, you'll never get over the hurdle. You'll be stuck with the burden forever while trying to convince yourself that you're happy with it, but you know better, you're not. And that is why these fat activists on TikTok are today, unfortunately, I must say, canceled. If you want to join my exclusive fan base or a cult, that's what it is, we're forming a cult, then all you got to do is click the subscribe button and ring the bell below this video to stay up to date with all my content. And if you want even more, you can watch or listen to my show at thedailywire.com, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Looking forward to welcoming you to the Sweet Baby Gang.